All right, guys, Aeneid 50 through 64. You might remember in the previous section, Juno is angrily thinking with herself about how Athena was able, on account of Ajax's crime alone, to destroy most of the Greek fleet and give them a hard homecoming. Here, she now begins to take action upon this anger that she feels, and so you begin with the expression volutans, right? Volutans talia, turning such things about, right? Notice I have highlighted for you the rather frequent use of present active participles here. Remember that present active participles do not indicate that something is happening in the present moment, but rather that something is happening at the same time as the action of the name as the main verb. So volutans, turning talia, such things, right? About secum. Again, remember what I said in the last video about secum, mecum, tecum, nobiscum, obiscum, etc., etc. And then the dea here is your subject, right? The goddess, volutans talia. And then flammato corde is sort of an ablative of description or characteristic or even respect with a corde that is flammato. Then you have the main verb, she came. So you can translate volutans as she was turning these things about, right? She came in patriam nimborum, into the patriam nimborum. And then loca feta here are used in apposition with patriam, right? As a sort of further exposition of what the patria are, right? The spots teeming with furentibus austris. Properly, auster is used of the south wind, but here Virgil poetically assimilates auster to mean winds in general. And then the name of the island here is Aeolia. Aeolia is supposedly a floating island with some of the bottom cut out from beneath. There isn't an island which corresponds to it. There are many places known as Aeolia, but this island specifically is obviously a mythical construct where the winds live, right? And they're named eponymously, or the island is named eponymously after Aeolus, the king of the winds. So here you have Rex Aeolus, and then hic, this is the locative hic. So here, right, the Rex Aeolus, King Aeolus, does what? He premit, right? You have to go all the way down here to your verb in 54, et, or ac, rather. Notice ac here is just a stronger form of et, ac frenat. He premit et frenat. The ventos, the luctantes ventos tempestatesque sonoras with imperio, right? In his vasto antro. So here, in a large cave, right? The king Aeolus premit, he presses the luctantes ventos and the tempestatesque sonoras with imperio. You might know imperium primarily as the Imperium Romanum, the Roman Empire, but in its most proper signification, imperium simply means the power which you have over someone to dispense of them with life and death. All right, ac and he vinclis et carcere frenat. Right. Vinclis here is a shortened form of vinculis, but if you look at the word vinculis, it needs to be shortened to fit in a hexameter verse, because vinculis with the U here between the C and the L would be one long syllable, a short syllable, and then a long syllable again in the ablative. So if you were to think about the scansion of that, that combination of syllables is metrically impossible in a hexameter verse, right? You'd need to, if you have a short syllable, it absolutely has to be followed up by another short syllable before you can have another long syllable, except in some cases for the ending of a verse where, or the ending of a line where you can have the last syllable as what's known as syllaba anceps, an either or syllable in effect. All right. So here vinclis is a shortened form of vinclis, chains, et carcere. Here, make the connection with carcer and our English derivative incarcerate, to put into prison. All right. Illi and that's a rather long line for it. Ili is referring to the wentos, the wenti in the nominative plural. So they, indignantes, right? Magno cum murmure. Remember what I said about cum with ablative, cum in the ablative with or with ablative adjectives and nouns. So cum magno murmure, right? With a great murmur. Montes circum claustra fremunt. They fremunt circum claustra montis, right? If that makes that clearer. Okay. The claustra being like the enclosures. All right. Celsa sedet Aeolus arche. Again, notice you have this word order here. Aeolus sedet Celsa arche, right? Aeolus sits in the Celsa arche. I'm sure you guys can recognize by now that an arx is a citadel, right? And Aeolus is described here as sceptra tenens, holding. Here you have poetic plural. You would expect sceptrum, but here you have sceptra, perhaps metrigratia, since notice that this would be a more this would be a metrical problematic passage if he had used the singular. All right, and what does he do? Molit quanimos, he softens their spirits, et temperat iras, right, and tempers their angers. Note the distinction between what he's doing here, softening their spirits and tempering their angers, versus what's described up here in lines 53 and 54, where the action is much more violent and aimed at suppression. He premit imperio et frenat vinclis et carcere. All right. Here, ni faciat, ni is shortened from nisi, and then notice you have faciat in the subjunctive to indicate that it is something which is contrary to fact. So if he did not do this, right, implying that he does, right? If he did not do this, and then in parentheses, but he does, mariac terras caelumque profundum quipe ferant rapidi secum verantque per auras. Here, rapidi is going to be your subject. It is an adjective used in isolation, but it is not used substantively. You're supposed to supply wenti here with your mind, right? Continuing on with the same subject. So they, rapid, would ferant bear off the mariac terras caelumque profundum secum with themselves. Again, pay attention to the use of secum rather than cum se, and then they would verant per auras. Notice here that, interestingly enough, aura is actually another word for breeze. You have ventus and aura. These are sometimes used interchangeably. Quite often, venti seem to have the force of more strength than aura would. And then you have an implied contrast here, but pater omnipotens, I'm sure you can guess that this is Jupiter. Omnipotens is almost the form of it has the form of a present active participle, and in origin it is, but it has become, in effect, a plain adjective, and this is the typical elliptical description of Zeus, or Jupiter, as the pater omnipotens, the omnipotent father. Abdidit speluncis atris, he put them away in dark caves. Hoc metuens, right? And then the hoc is supposed to refer back to this idea, right? So because Jupiter feared all the stuff that's described in this line, he did what is described here. So he put them into the caves, fearing this. And notice here the participle has almost a certain, it has an explanatory force, right? So because he feared this, he did these things. Molem quet montis in super altos imposuit, right? And he placed a molem and montis altos. Here, montis, this might have thrown you off. This is actually a longer I. This is another form of the accusative where you might have expected montes, right? So accusative plural here, agreeing with altos, right? And you might remember molis, a mound or a mass, from tantai molis erat condre urbem. All right, so he placed those things upon them. Regemque did it and gave a king. What's not supplied here is something like ilis or eis, which you're supposed to supply. And note that it goes with the wenti again. So to them he gave a king who, right, so qui is modifying regem, who with a foida recerto would know sciret et premere et laxas dare usus habenas. Here, usus, your perfect, in effect, your perfect participle used to mean he would know sciret usus when ordered to premere, to press. Notice that you have this verb back up here with imperio premit. He would know when to press et laxas dare habenas, and give the loosed reins. All right. And then ad quem, so here's a long description of Aeolus and his home and the reasons for it being the way it is. And then ad quem, this refers all the way back up here to Aeolus. All right. I don't know if I really needed to draw that, but there you go. So to whom, tum, then suplex vocibus usast. Right here, note that that utor is a deponent verb, utor, uti, usus. And then if you look in a dictionary, you will see that utor does not take a standard direct object in the accusative, but is always used with an ablative of the thing used, right? So usa est his vocibus. She used these voices literally, but notice that this is used in sort of a figurative sense, almost by metonymy, for words, right? Used these words or voices. All right.